representing the Special Rapporteur on his study on the status of implementation of the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord of 1997. The study provides a useful overview of the extent to which the provisions of the Accord have been implemented and presents the main challenges related to the implementation of the Accord. The study confirms the content of numerous reports on the situation in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, as well as the statements made over the years by Indigenous peoples from the Chittagong Hill Tracts to the Permanent Forum, namely that progress in implementing the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord is painfully slow, and that the slow progress is exacerbating the distressing human rights situation facing the Indigenous peoples in the region. In particular, one of the biggest impediments to peace in the area remains the failure to address the land disputes in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. Although a chairman of the Land Commission, the mandate of which is to settle land-related disputes in the Chittagong Hill Tracts, was appointed in 2009, disagreement with Indigenous members of the Land Commission over the legal basis of the functioning of the Commission, as laid down in the Chittagong Hill Tracts Land Dispute Resolution Commission Act 2001, has largely left the Commission defunct. We note in addition that the legislation needs to fully reflect the requirements and obligations contained in the Chittagong Hill Tracts Peace Accord. Madam Chair, the failure to solve the land disputes and curb the land grabbing that continues to take place fuels the violent clashes between Indigenous peoples and Bengali settlers that take place on a regular basis. This year, there have already been 2 major arson attacks in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. During both incidents, there have been losses of lives, severe injuries to both Indigenous peoples and Bengalis, and extensive damage to property. In each case, there were claims by Indigenous peoples that the army and the police failed to take action to protect their communities and homes. The continuous and systematic human rights violations committed against the Indigenous peoples in the Chittagong Hill Tracts are also linked to the lack of constitutional safeguards for the rights of Indigenous peoples of Bangladesh. The current constitutional amendment process in Bangladesh has led to a strong call by Indigenous peoples to be recognised as such in the Constitution. This recognition would demonstrate the government's election pledge to work for the rights of Indigenous peoples and its commitment to international human rights. It would also substantiate the Prime Minister's public statement during the International Day of the World's Indigenous People in 2009, emphasising the government's support of the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Amnesty International and IFGEA strongly support the recommendations outlined in the study and respectfully proposes that the Permanent Forum should first reiterate the recommendation to the government of Bangladesh made by the UN Human Rights Council in connection with the Universal Periodic Review of Bangladesh in 2009, to fully implement the Chittagong Hill Tracts Accord as a matter of priority and develop a time frame for its full implementation. Second, urge the government of Bangladesh to immediately take appropriate actions with the active participation and consent of Indigenous peoples to address land-related problems of the Indigenous peoples of the Chittagong Hill Tracts, which requires strengthening the Land Commission, including by amending the undemocratic and equivocal provisions of the concerned law. Third, urge the government of Bangladesh to address the issue of impunity for human rights violations in the Chittagong Hill Tracts by holding independent investigations into such reports. The authorities must bring those accused of killing or injuring others or destroying their property to justice. Urge the government of Bangladesh to include a provision for recognising Indigenous peoples in the National Constitution of Bangladesh. Fifthly, urge the government of Bangladesh to extend an official invitation to the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples to visit Bangladesh to assess the situation in the Chittagong Hill Tracts. And finally, Madam Chair, we would urge the Permanent Forum and the State of Bangladesh to maintain a constructive dialogue, drawing upon the insights and great work of the Forum in its report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I give the floor to Celeste McKing from the North American Regional